Hello, and welcome to another edition of our Stonewood study group. My name is Neil Wilding. I'm one of the partners here at Stonewood Financial. And these study groups are a chance for us to get together as a membership base and just kind of talk through anything new in the industry, whether it's emerging trends. In the past, it's been launching some new software. And today, we're going to kind of morph those two topics together. We're going to talk about some emerging trends, some conversations that I think it's important for you to have with your clients. But I'm going to use the new software we've built to help make my point and show you how you can become the expert in your area that truly understands not only the need for doing a Roth conversion, but the impact it could have on your clients and their retirement. The topic for today is I want to identify the hidden risks that exist in deferring IRA money and the taxation of that IRA money to the future. I know most of you are right smack dab in the middle of tax season, so it's a busy time. Roth conversion, I'm sure you're speaking that term on maybe a minute by minute basis, just because it's such a hot topic these days. And so what I want to cover, though, most people, when they're looking at the potential for a Roth conversion, they're just looking at taxes. But what I want to do is expose some other things that might be going on under the surface that may kind of come back to maybe bite your clients later on if they are deferring taxes to the future. So in the midst of this real busy tax season, we're going to talk through a few of these here and hopefully give you some some areas, some conversations you can have with your clients once the dust settles on tax season, and really start planning already for not just next April 15th, but every April 15th that your client's going to have in retirement. So let's talk through this. We pushed live this software. We call it Roth Done Right. And really what the software is meant to do is help you answer three questions. One, should my client convert? Which we help answer that through the lens of the total taxes and IRMA they would pay over their lifetime, whether they stay in the IRA or convert that money. We also want to help uncover the variables, like what other variables are in play. And the software identifies tax drift. It talks through conversion delta, which is the risk that taxes change while we're in the process of converting assets, and helps quantify that to where if taxes change while we convert, perhaps we would have been better off converting before that happened. And then the third piece is IRMA, and not only the presence of IRMA during a Roth conversion, but helping quantify what those surcharges would look like over your client's lifetime. So those, are the variables in play. And then the final piece, right? So should my client convert? Do we understand all the variables in play? And then finally, once we put everything together, what's the optimal conversion pattern? Should we be doing this as fast as possible to eliminate risk immediately, or should we spread out our conversion to help avoid tax drift? And so the software is going to help answer that. But I want to dive in today and kind of look through the purpose of the report that we've put out. What is it meant to do? How does it make these calculations? But then, start talking through the variables that drive the results of the report. This is a Roth conversion. It's pretty easy to make a broad stroke and just say, you know what, most of my clients should convert some of their assets. But when we start to look at, and I'm not saying convert all assets, but a portion, diversification makes sense. And so we can say that for a lot of people, it does make sense. But when you start to look at changing scenarios and the variables that drive the results, is your client currently on Medicare, or do they have some time before Medicare? Are they currently retired, or are they still working? What state are they in? What is the income tax situation of the state that they're in? What's their current tax bracket? All these variables come in play. And based on where your client sits, within the answers to these questions, the results can be very different from client A to client B. So we can't really just make a broad generalization on, yep, every client needs to convert and everybody needs to convert over a 10-year time frame. It can be wildly different. And so because of that, what I really want to do is use the software to look at some of these variables that could be in play, some of these what ifs. What if my client's situation changes? And how would their tax situation change? And so I want to show the impact of these changes in some of the variables or the assumptions that we have to make in running the report. And what that does, when you start to look at some of the changes and inputs, that's where it starts to expose some of these hidden risks that people might not be thinking about if they choose to pass on a Roth conversion or really slow down the Roth conversion. They might not understand, it's not just about my tax situation going up and tax bracket. There's so many more variables in play. So I'm going to address those, and we're going to talk through it through a few examples. Let's start with just a base case, because before I go start changing things, we have to just look at, okay, how does the report work? And for those of you that are already using this report on a daily basis, maybe this is a refresher for you, but we're going to get to some of the variables that we can change here in a minute. But I do think it's important to just establish a base case. And I like to start with like a very successful couple. So let's look at a 60-year-old couple. They've got $1 million IRA that they're considering, and about how much should we convert. And so the initial assessment says, okay, let's consider converting half of that IRA. They're each doing well. Let's just give them each a $150,000 salary. Maybe they've done well most of their working career, so they're looked to get a pretty high benefit on their Social Security. What I'm trying to do is paint the picture of a successful working couple that is on the brink of retirement, but not quite there. And, like many of our clients that we're working with, maybe they came to us because of our business model and truly understand the need for guaranteed income and income risk planning. And so maybe they already have an annuity that you've sold them. So in this example, let's just assume that we've sold them an FIA with a guaranteed income rider that's going to kick in at age 70 with a $50,000. So maybe that's also IRA money. And so that's going to kick in later. So the client's doing pretty well here. High level of Social Security between the husband and wife, and then also a guaranteed income. So 6 figures worth of income before we even consider the IRA hitting the situation. So now let's look at and say, okay, what would the total taxes be if A, we don't need that money and we're just going to take the IRA through the required minimum distribution process. And so in that case, if we're just going through the RMD process, the total taxes my clients are going to pay. Remember, I just identified $500,000 of their IRA. And I only need to know Social Security and the other stuff because I'm trying to establish a baseline and say, okay, where am I taxed now? And then what are my taxes going to be once the IRA hits? And the report is meant to calculate the total taxes just on the IRA. So we have to establish a tax bracket and then an effective tax rate within that. And then we're layering in more IRA income, and that's how we're calculating the taxes here. So if we don't need the money and we're going to just pass it to the heirs, we're going to defer as long as possible. That's the RMD process. In this case, that $500,000 would kick off $424,000 in taxes. Now, good news, despite all of that income that they have through Social Security and the annuity, and then now when the RMD kicks in from that $500,000, we're not really hitting any of the thresholds for IRMA surcharges. So they're not part of this evaluation. Total tax bill through the RMD process, $424,000. Now, if we're just going to take as level income, that means that we retire at age 70. I think I pushed this out to like 95 on the income analysis. Total taxes there are $326,000. So whether we don't need the IRA, we're going through the RMD process or through the level income, total tax situation, $300,000 to $400,000. But we can go through the conversion process, get out the door for 126. Now it does trigger some IRMA surcharges. And so there's $12,000 of surcharges involved here. So some clients might say, oh man, I really shouldn't do this Roth conversion because of that $12,000 in surcharges. And that basically what's happening there is because we're converting money and their working income plus that conversion income, the conversion income pushes them into a threshold where now they have to pay some of those surcharges. In this case, 12,000 bucks worth. So to all in though, 139. So as we look at this, we're thinking, well, it's still pretty compelling case to convert. But see, and this is where I talk about changing the variables a little bit. I assumed the taxes are level, and that's a flawed scenario. Oh, by the way, I forgot I was going to show you here. Before we get to like changing taxes and IRMA and stuff to look at the results, let's also look at the conversion pattern here. So on the previous page, we're talking about the total taxes. If we just go through the RMD process, total taxes through level income, compare that to total taxes on a Roth conversion. Well, now let's look at and say, okay, if we're going to convert, what would the ideal conversion pattern be based on these inputs? And a lot of people, kind of traditional, conventional wisdom might say, well, let's spread this out. Let's avoid tax drift. Let's do a 10-year or maybe even beyond what the report shows there. But actually here, if we're truly trying to minimize, I took a guess and thought maybe 5 years would be right for this client. And so when I ran the total tax bill on the conversion, that was assuming a 5-year conversion. And that's a $139,000 tax bill. But if we convert a little quicker, what the report tells me is a 4-year conversion would actually save us the most amount of money. 132,000 in taxes there. So, you know, 5-year conversion, 4-year conversion, pretty similar. But what it shows is the longer we wait, kind of counter conventional wisdom, actually, the more you pay in tax. Why? Because I assume taxes go well, actually not yet, but we'll get to that. So let's look at this with the tax bracket. The first piece of this is drift. All right, and so that's one of the variables in play. And so most people think, okay, I don't want to do a 1-year conversion. I can't do it all in 1 year because that's where I'm going to pay the most drift. And that's true. Like right here, if we did a 1-year conversion, convert it all, you'd be looking at what, $38,000 worth of drift. But if we spread it out to 10 years, well, there's no drift. But now you look at conversion delta. Well, those are all zeros. Why? Because in this analysis, I did not assume tax is changing yet, right? But that is, so, conversion delta doesn't really come into play. But IRMA sure does. And so if we can convert this in 3 years, we would avoid IRMA altogether. And clearly, the longer that we spread this out, the more subject we're going to be to those IRMA surcharges. So this is how the software helps quantify for you these different variables. And I don't know that this is something we're going to go and sit down with every client. It might be a level of analysis, maybe a bridge too far, but I do think it's important for us as the advisor community to understand all the variables in play. And so that's what the software is meant to do. Now, I tried to jump ahead to this because this is where I think the analysis really gets interesting, is I am going to show a couple changes. I showed taxes staying flat. And so this was my initial analysis where my total tax bill was 424 or 326. Well, why do we even consider a Roth conversion in the first place? We consider a Roth conversion because we're concerned that taxes could be higher in the future than they are today. Well, let's model that. And let's model, in my examples, I've been going 7 years. And this may change based on what gets signed into law based on the extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. As of the timing of recording of this study group, that's still unknown. I'm hearing 5 to 8 years, something like that. I'm going to assume a 5-year extension for this analysis, which actually means in year 7, because we're already in year 1. 5 more years is 6. Sorry, yeah. And then that means in the 7th year, taxes will change. Every time I do that, see, I'm not the math guy. I got to use my fingers here. But anyway, that's where we came with the 7. So just modeling the tax change alone. Taxes go up in the 7th year. That's one piece. Now, the second piece is IRMA. And, we've spent a lot of time on IRMA as we've pushed out this new software. I feel like IRMA is one of the perfect examples of legislative risk because it is a way for Congress. They passed the law a while ago, actually, but when they passed that law, it established not only the right for them to charge these surcharges on your Medicare Part B and D premiums, but also built into that law is the fact that it's going to go up. And it goes up not on inflation. People tend to call it an inflation adjustment. That's not what this is. It's an experience-based adjustment. So that's more like our health insurance. And so when we go, and I know in our group plan, we had a pretty healthy increase this year. And so did the country. And so IRMA, the surcharge has gone up between 4 and 8% every year. The last 5 or 6 years, that number's been more like 7%. Last year was 5.9%. So I'm just going to model a 6% increase. So just showing taxes going up in the 7th year, showing IRMA going up on average 6% a year, suddenly my results change dramatically. And so what was a $400,000 tax bill now becomes a $550,000 tax bill. My level income scenario becomes $424,000. Now my IRMA didn't go up. I showed that IRMA going up, but in this case, that didn't go up because we're not really having income levels yet, by the way, where IRMA surcharges are even in the equation. But I think that's important to footnote. Now, it did show that the IRMA in the conversion actually goes up a little bit, and so does our tax bill, right? So, well, in fact, the tax bill stays the same because we were able to convert these assets before the taxes changed. But my IRMA goes up, and it goes up from 12 to 17 grand. And again, that's just in a couple of years of the compounding of that increase in the surcharge. And so all the more urgency to go ahead and convert this money before those surcharges kick in. But anyway, I think this is a good way to run the report. Run it as a base case and then run it again, showing those increases, creating all the more urgency. All right, and actually my conversion pattern stays the same. The report still suggests we should be converting this money over 4 years. But what it does is because I modeled now taxes going up, that means the more that we spread out the conversion, the more total tax we're going to pay on the conversion. And so again, all the more reason to be urgent and kind of eat our vegetables a little bit, right? And go through the conversions. All right, now let's get to the heart of this, which is let's talk through the hidden risks of deferring taxes into the future. I think the concern of taxes being higher in the future than they are today, that's not really hidden. That's apparent, and in your marketing, you're probably motivating your clients because we fear the taxes could be higher in the future than they are today. But there's some hidden risks that maybe you're not thinking of that I think can really be motivators in client conversations. And the first is, we're sitting down. This couple is married. They're age 60. They're healthy. They have good incomes, and we're planning for a long retirement for each of them. But that doesn't always happen, right? Tragedy might strike, some things might happen where maybe by the time we hit retirement, there's only one spouse still there. And so let's just say in this case, the husband has a heart attack at like age 69, 70. And the spouse, not only are they dealing with the mourning of a lost spouse, they also now are going to be subject to what we like to call the widow's penalty. I think it's become a pretty common term. A lot of people use it. But when most people think about the widow's penalty, they think about that from a tax perspective, which is, if I'm a married filing joint and suddenly I'm filing as a single filer, it's a very different tax bracket. And a different percentage that's going to be applied to the same level of income that I had. That's where, that's the widow's penalty from a tax perspective. A lot of people don't think about it, that it also applies with our IRMA surcharges. So let's talk about this for a minute. So when you look at this chart, this shows the thresholds for having to pay a surcharge. And so if we're like currently, this couple, they're 60 years old, and when they're married, let's say if they've got $150,000 of income that they're going to need, nowhere near the $212,000 threshold for paying a surcharge, right? There's a pretty healthy cushion before they would be paying any type of IRMA, which is why when I ran the report, and I ran the report as a married filing joint, that like there was no IRMA to speak of, like the non-issue until the conversion. But what if we don't make it, right? What if one of those spouses passes away? And as I said, not only are we dealing with, mourning the loss of a spouse, now we're filing as a single filer and we have those same levels of income. Suddenly, we're in a completely different threshold here, where now not only one, but maybe two tiers of IRMA surcharges can be present. And even, and I'm going to run this, even if, the Social Security, you just got the spouse Social Security coming now, there's still, you got that annuity and you got all the IRA money that's going to be hitting either through the RMD process or through the level income process, much more likely to start hitting some of those IRMA surcharges, just because of the way we're filing our taxes now. And so let's quantify that. So let's go in and let's just rerun this report. It's everything else the same, but now let's assume the husband passes away and the wife is now filing as a single filer by the time that they take this income. And so my situation before was my taxes were going to be like 400,000 or 300,000. We can get out the door for 139. But then I showed taxes changing, right? I modeled the tax change. So now the tax bill went to like 552 or 424. We can get out the door for what, 144? Well, that's as a married filing joint. When I rerun the report on the spouse as a single filer, suddenly here we got IRMA, and it's IRMA pretty hefty. Like we're looking at $130,000 of IRMA surcharges now that wife would be subject to. And so I think that can be a very powerful message to look at and say, you know what? If we can get out the door here and convert this money, when we sit down with a couple and we talk about the widow's penalty, I think a lot of, especially men, are going to be very compelled to protect our wife from those surcharges. And that's where a Roth conversion can really come into play and get these assets off the books. So that's one example. And I think an extremely powerful example is understand the widow's penalty, not only as a tax perspective, but from an IRMA perspective. And when we're sitting down with our couples, there's going to be some real motivating behavior to kind of protect there. All right, let's look at another one. What's another scenario that could really change our results? Well, what if we keep working? I am a small business owner. I love what I do. I love my advisor clients. I love hosting these study groups and speaking and innovate and talking to all of you on a daily basis. Just because I hit 65 or 70, I mean, at least that's the plan. I'm probably going to keep going. And a lot of people that love what they do, they don't want to stop. And so the presence of income, like earned income in retirement, where we've got Social Security and maybe you got the annuity, but also we're going to keep working. I mean, just the presence of that, like IRMA is income related. And so that means the more income that we have, the more surcharges we're going to pay. And so now I'm going to go back and thankfully they're both still alive. And in fact, one of them is still alive. They're going to keep working. And I'm going to just model. Remember, I said both of them are earning 150. Let's just say one of them keeps working and they've got an extra $150,000 of working income. How do our results change? Well, again, there's our situation on the left, which is just how we initially ran the report. And now when we have some working income, boy, do we have an opportunity to get out the door for a lot less. And again, that's just saying, okay, there's already a case to where we want to convert. But now when we start to look at the impact of more income later, and we can speak to that IRMA surcharge. For me, showing a report that has that number, what I like to do is I look at that number. For example, let's look at the level income in the KEEP IRA, right? So if we're just going to look at the level income, on the right-hand side of the analysis there. So that's $460,000 of taxes and another $61,000 of IRMA surcharges you'd have to pay just because you decided to keep working. Those surcharges, that 61,000, I like to speak to that in two ways. One is the number it represents itself, right? Would you rather pay $61,000 in surcharges over your lifetime, or 17,000 as like an exit charge, right? Give me the 17,000 over the 61 all day, any day, right? But I like to speak to IRMA a second way, is not just the number itself, but what it represents, what that surcharge represents. If you have IRA money and we're going to be taxed on that IRA money, it really has three very important impacts, right? One, and they're all income related, right? So if we have to take IRMA, actually IRMA, like that's based on your Medicare, right? And so that's the IRS and the government getting more surcharges because of income through IRMA. Also through Social Security, right? There's another income related situation. The more money you have, the more Social Security that gets taxed. What about capital gains, right? The more income you have in retirement, the higher the capital gains. You get hit with a little penalty there, where you get to pay a higher capital gains check if you make too much. So I like to talk about IRMA not only in that $61,000 itself, but also what it represents, and this concept of income-related surcharges, taxes, whatever you want to call them. They've proven to be very successful at raising revenue for our government, for the IRS. The government's going to need more revenue, and so what are they going to do? They're going to turn to the successful programs. And so I feel like that IRMA is not only 61,000, but it's almost like a placeholder for a lot more things of what it could be. Anyway, off my soapbox. Let's get to another one. And let's say that the IRA now, and I'm going to talk about a hidden risk, and this is kind of an odd one, but it's true, is what if the IRA exceeds expectations? All of the assumptions that I ran before, I think assumed a 5% growth rate. Well, what if we have a couple of monster years in the market? And to where now my average growth rate is 8% instead of 5. Like that's now, make no mistake, that's not a problem. Like that's a great thing. Congratulations, right? Pat yourself on the back. You did a great thing. But if all of that growth and massive growth, especially early on, right? If we have a couple of monster years in the market, if all of that happens within the constructs of an IRA, that means all of the taxes kind of come with it. And so I wanted to run this example, again, not because this is a problem. Obviously, we want to do as well as we can in our IRAs. But if we're going to have some high growth accounts, boy, wouldn't that be better if that happened in an account that's already been taxed at the amount before it experienced all that massive growth? And so let's model that. And so I'm going to assume instead of 5%, we're going to go 8%. And again, on the left is my report and how it was initially run. And now I made the change. And in this one, couple, is both members of the couple still very much alive and active. They retired at age 70 when they said they were going to do. Like, we're back to the base case here. But the only thing I changed now is an 8% growth rate instead of a 5%. Again, congratulations. That's great. But you know what? My tax bill just exploded. And I went from a $500,000 tax bill to a $1.5 million tax bill, especially if this is money going to the heirs. And look at all that IRMA. We're talking about 6 figures worth of surcharges. Again, just because we had more growth in the IRA. Now, if we got out the door before any of that happened, well, then we're in good shape, right? So I bring those to you, and this is where I'm going to kind of wrap this up. But I urge you, first off, go in and run some reports. Start playing around with this software. It's become very popular. I'm taking calls daily from our members that are in there, testing out the software, running it, asking questions about what assumptions we've made and how we've built it. I love all of the interaction I've had with our membership base over this new software. So please go in and run a report, run a base case. But then what I'm going to urge you to do is consider the what ifs. What if, we want to represent that widow's penalty, or what if something changes that we didn't anticipate in the initial run of the report? what if taxes go up more than we expected? And so run these scenarios, because what it's going to do is it's probably going to increase our urgency a little bit. So as the dust settles on tax season, and your clients are focused on April 15th, and you probably are too, focused on April 15th. We get past this, let's reflect a little bit on what April 15th represents, and how can we protect the future April 15th, right? And start looking at not just this one, but every April 15th our client's going to have in retirement, and how much of our assets are in the line of fire. Are we dodging bullets? Or we're like, oh man, not paying Irma now, but man, something happens, suddenly I'm right smack dab in the middle of an Irma problem. Or just start running some of these scenarios, and as we start to do planning for our clients, let's not dodge bullets. Let's get those assets out of the line of fire for a portion, right? And just reallocate some of those to the tax-free side. Use the Roth Done Right software to help have those conversations. As always, I want to thank you for your time. I know it's busy right now. You probably got, a calendar full of meetings today. And so I appreciate you taking some time to listen and join me here for this study group. If you do want to dive deeper into the IRMA software that we've put out and the Roth Done Right software, the QR code's on the screen. Hopefully you already, though, know how to get a hold of the team. Book some time with our member success team. They are there for you, not only for you to be able to ask your questions or if something's not working, but how to get the most out of it. Because it's not just the software, but the marketing resources. We've updated all of our seminar slides to help you tell this story. And if you want to get in on some training events that we have coming up, whether it's software, marketing, training, whatever it may be, any of the aspects of your membership, reach out to the team. They can show you how to take advantage of it. So hope you're having a great day. Happy tax season to everyone. And best of luck, and look forward to, as you're in there using the software, interacting with you. Let me know what questions you have, comments you have. Can't wait to have those conversations. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.